Yeah, I think Milky Swap was the first DEX that you saw ADA next to USDC. It's
Yeah,
like, wait a second, that's pretty cool.
it
So
is.
probably that was an historic moment.
It was for me at least, because I've used USDC for years as my stable coin, and just seeing it next to ADA, it's like, ooh, we've made it.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you guys so much for coming to this video today. I really appreciate it. This is one I'm really excited for. Today I have Nico with me, and Nico is actually the CEO of DC Spark, and DC Spark is one of the core contributors to Milk Meta, which is actually a side chain on Cardano that is bringing immense value. And today in this podcast, we're going to learn about everything that DC Spark's been working on recently, and also the future of DC Spark. How are you doing today, Nico?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no problem. Seriously, I've been waiting a long time on this one, so I'm excited. What is DC Spark for someone that's in the community but never have heard of DC Spark before?
Yeah, so what we see ourselves, and maybe it's like a little not so common way to describe DC Spark, is that we are a company that's focusing in growing blockchain ecosystems. So we build like tooling for developers and also build critical products for the ecosystem to like boost. So an example of this could be like a wallet, or it could be like a library for being able to interact with the protocol at the lower level.
Awesome. What would you say the most important thing that you guys are currently working on is?
I would say actually maybe two, which is one is Flint, which is a crypto wallet that's going to be multi-chain, and it has support for dApps. So we want Flint to be the go-to wallet so you can interact with different platforms. And right now we believe that the thesis is that there's going to be a lot of interoperability. And we have seen this like a little bit like more now with like so many chains and like maybe second layer solutions. So Flint wants to be the wallet that makes all of this easier, especially with like moving assets and not having to change between different wallets, because that's like kind of like complex and confuses a lot of like newer people. So the idea is that Flint could be as simple as when you go to a centralized exchange, but Flint is decentralized, is like non-custodial, and you can see all your tokens in one list, no matter if they're like in different networks, and also you can move them between different networks in the same UI, and also you can interact with dApps. So we want to make the entire dApp experience like so much easier, and I think this is going to be great for the entire ecosystem, because this is going to make like newer people that are like being onboarded to blockchain much simple, because sometimes like way too many things. And also the second project that we are working on as core developers is Milk Meta, which in phase one is a sidechain for Cardano, but in phase two we're going to be moving to a rollup. And what is Milk Meta? Milk Meta allows to deploy Ethereum smart contracts, which are the same ones that Phantom uses, Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, and many other ecosystem, to be able to deploy on Cardano and be able to interact with these smart contracts using ADA, which is like pretty cool.
Yeah, it is actually really cool. And, I do a lot of podcasts, and oftentimes, people have, ideas, things that they're working on. Well, Flint Wallet is actually already out there today. You can download the Flint Wallet as a browser extension and, send some ADA over there and actually use that ADA on Milk Meta. So once it's in, the Flint Wallet, you can send it over to Milk Meta, which, as you mentioned, is a side chain on Cardano, and interact with Ethereum-based smart contracts, which is awesome. Currently, though, after you move the ADA over, you do have to switch to MetaMask. And I like that you guys are really, using this, huge focus on accessibility. I've introduced a lot of my family to cryptocurrency, and, explaining the different networks to them. The accessibility really just isn't there. So I'm really excited to hear that you guys are working on, making an accessible wallet for all chains to really make that user experience a lot easier for people. So,
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as utility, these EVM contracts on this side chain, For somebody who really hasn't interacted with Ethereum, what utility do these EVM, smart contracts on the sidechain on Cardano provide to the average Cardano user?
Yeah, so it's not just about Ethereum, but there's like multiple ecosystems that they're using what is called the EVM, which is like the Ethereum Milton machine. They not necessarily are using Ether, so this is not so related to Ethereum as a token, but actually like the virtual machine that runs the smart contracts. So right now what we have seen, which is like that a lot of like newer ecosystems, sometimes it takes time to bootstrap in terms of like oracles, DEXs. Maybe Cardano is moving pretty fast with DEXs, but we are still missing oracles, money markets, lending, and so many other things like algorithmic stablecoins. They're being worked, but it's taking a little bit longer than we would like. And when we can bring like an EVM or even like maybe other virtual machines that are going to be available in the future, because the protocol behind Milkomeda is quite flexible, this is going to benefit the ecosystem because you're going to be able to build with different programming languages for Cardano, and that's going to be like really, really cool. And it's going to be more welcoming to like different developers to be able to be on Cardano, because although Haskell is pretty cool, we need to also be honest about this, that not everyone's going to be coding in Haskell. So that's also important for the entire ecosystem, that also we can onboard other type of developers that maybe they prefer to work with like Solidity, or eventually maybe we can also work with a virtual machine that is going to allow you to like code in Rust.
Yeah, and there's a lot of existing tooling that is already out there for Solidity and EVM compatibility. So Milkomeda really, in my opinion, brings a huge amount of utility in that the existing tooling and knowledge base from Ethereum and other EVM-based cryptocurrencies or protocols. When interacting with Milkomeda on the Cardano side, you take your ADA and you lock it up in that smart contract. Is there risk in users, locking up ADA in their smart contract and moving to Milkomeda?
Yeah, there is unfortunately, there's always like some level of risk, but you always have this risk even when you're using dApps in Cardano itself, because when you're using an app and, for example, you're providing liquidity, you're giving custody of your UTXOs. So sometimes it's going to depend on the smart contract if it has a bug. So and there is like this difference between like just working in the Cardano protocol level where you stake and you like can send funds, and this is pretty safe because it's at the Cardano level. But when you start using dApps, which I will say that are at the same level as Milkomeda, there is another level of risk, because this is not, you stop being at the protocol level. It's not IOHK building this, it's like other teams building on top of like what is feasible in Cardano. So we take this really seriously, and almost everyone on the team has been involved with Cardano as developers and doing a lot of stuff since like very, very early, multiple years. For example, I was the CTO of Emurgo until like a little over like a year ago. I also was one of the board members of the Cardano Foundation. Seba was who created this library Cardano called the Cardano Synchronization Library, which is the wallet that every single wallet is using. Even Coinbase did integration for Cardano using this library that basically Seba created. And not IHK, not Emurgo, not other people in Emurgo. Seba created while Emurgo, but it was like Seba, the one that came out with the idea and did most of the execution with Rob, which is also in our team, and or Cardano Foundation. So we have already been created like critical libraries, so we have a lot of knowledge. And also, for example, we have Nicola Di Prima, who was the lead developer for Jormungander, which, for the ones that don't know, was the first implementation of Ouroboros, the consensus protocol of Cardano. In Rust, and that there is a lot of like OGs, stateful operators that actually they launch first in Jormungander, and they start like getting the feeling of like what is to be a validator. So we have and we also have other people that, like, for example, Rob Konaki, who was a board member at the Ergo Foundation. He brought like oracles to Ergo. He also brought like DJet for Ergo with me. We work on that. So we have a lot of people that are like really, really experienced. So we have really taken all the precautions as possible and the best the best practice in terms of security. And even we have done 2 different audits with like really good companies to make sure that everything is like very, very safe. But there is always like, unfortunately, some level of risk.
Yeah, there's always risk, especially with new technology. I have a question for you because you have all of this knowledge and, your team has a lot of experience. Are you guys more comfortable, with Cardano smart contracts because they're written, in Plutus, and it is a formally verified language versus EVM contracts? Or do you think that we still need more time to see if that really, plays out?
Yeah, so right now, I think like the protocol, how Cardano is working right now, when you code the language itself is using formal methods, but when you write something, it's not formally verified out of the box. And actually right now, there's no dApp out there that I have seen that's been formally verified. They have audits. For example, we have seen with MintSwap, they have one of the best companies that actually works with IOHK in designing Plutus, which is Twig. And Wingriders found a critical bug in there. And with formal verification, that will have not happen, but they didn't do it because that's not ready yet, as far as I know. And even when you work with one of the top companies in the Cardano space, Twig, which is, like I mentioned, they're like part of the team that's creating Plutus. Like Manuel Chakrabarty with Michael Payton Jones are like designing Plutus, literally. And other people are also working like the specs. They still found bugs. So right now there's still like some racing ball when you're building in Plutus. And also me, Seba, Rob Kornacki, we have like multiple write-ups to IOHK with feedback of how we believe like Plutus should evolve. And for example, like I think it's CIP30, where you should be able to like read information from other UTXOs without having to use them. And we have been saying this for like over a year and a half ago, because Ergo actually works like that. And me and Rob Kornacki, we were working in Ergo, so we knew this, and we're like, Cardano needs to work like this, and like some other things that we also have raised. So I'm glad that Plutus now is evolving to be like more useful, like not more useful, more flexible. I mean, and in terms, because right now what happens when you want to implement an app, you actually need to have like, for example, for the case of SundaeSwap, you need to have scoopers. So you have a lot of like code that's off chain, and sometimes you cannot have assurance of like some things because they're like outside Plutus. And when you have transparency and assurance is when everything happens on chain, and sometimes there are a lot of things that are like happening off chain.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. So earlier you mentioned that Milko Meta is currently a side chain on Cardano, and it seemed that you were suggesting that will change, and the change is to layer 2, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So Cardano is going to go through like some really, really cool hard forks. There is one coming up in June, if I'm correct. And there's another one maybe in October or something like that. Don't quote me on this one. It's just from the top of my mind.
Yeah, no worries.
So this should make Cardano go faster. And also it should allow us to write more information, because what is the difference between a sidechain and a layer 2 solution? So a sidechain is as if you have, for example, I'm going to try to do an analogy. Let's see how it goes. Let's say that Cardano is a house. It's like a really, really cool house that's using like the best civil engineering like methods. It's like amazing house. It's looking great. A sidechain will be like a small house next to this house. So maybe there's like a path that you can move between the two houses. So when you have visits, they can stay in this extra house because there's not enough space in the Cardano house, so they can stay in this like side house, and everything is like pretty fast because they just walk 10 steps and they can. But still, it's another house. For example, if there's like, I don't know, a win or something, one security is different than the other. So a layer 2 is that we are actually building a second floor on top of this house, but this house needs to be like strong enough that can support the second floor.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
All the information from this second layer it should be like written to the first layer. So right now, where we have seen, for example, with the launch of SundaeSwap or some of the other projects that are going to be launching, that sometimes the network get like a little bit saturated and it takes like some time to execute transactions, stuff like that. So that's why right now it's not feasible to do a layer 2, because the amount of information that you have to write to Cardano would take too long. So for example, if you want to do a transaction, it takes like 30 minutes or 1 hour. Imagine that there's a block that takes like 1 hour to confirm in this sidechain. It will be so slow, and people will complain, "Hey, what's going on? It takes 1 hour, and also I cannot do that many transactions." So for the time being, we started with the sidechain, which has like really, really good security properties, and also the bridge that we are using. All the teams like really good with security, but not even that. We hired 2 top-notch companies to do audit, which is arbitrary execution, and also Certic. But the phase 2 is to be moving to the second layer once Cardano goes through like some updates, and what is called data availability, it gets improved.
Okay, and then this layer 2, you guys are going to be using ZK rollups on the layer 2, and what are ZK rollups for those that don't know?
Yeah, so ZK rollups are a really, really cool technology. Rollups is related to, I'm going to split ZK rollups in 2 parts, the ZK part and the rollup part. Rollup part maybe is like a little bit easier to explain. So rollup is that everything that's happening in this chain, it gets written down to the main chain. So this makes things more secure, because if someone wants to recover the state of this layer 2 solution, they just need to go to Cardano, and they can read all the information in Cardano itself, and they can reconstruct the state of this second layer solution. So that's like basically like a simplistic way to see rollups. The ZK part is like, I stand for zero knowledge. And actually, ZK rollups don't use zero knowledge proof, they use validity proof. So the difference that zero knowledge, I'm not a cryptographer, so validity proof is that you can validate that something happened, but zero knowledge, it go a step further, because it can like also give you more privacy preserving properties. So they're called ZK rollups. All of them, from what I have seen, including Starkware, ZK Sync, and other ones, are like validity proofs. So they create a small validation that you can check on chain that something happened. So you don't need to have like the entire computation. You just have like the validity, like the proof that a computation happened, and that can get verified in a smart contract. And once that pass, there's another smart contract that holds the state of the chain. So if a transaction happened that gets a proof gets created, then that proof gets verified on chain. That on chain is going to trigger that the state is going to move forward by this transaction that maybe I send you some ADA to you. For us, that maybe is going to be more like 2.5 stage or 3, because first we're going to implement like the rollup, and then the idea is that as a layer 3 solution on top of this EVM compatibility as a second layer, we will implement that layer 3. And for this, we will be trying to partner with other companies that are already like building a lot of like this architecture and this like tooling.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that explanation. One thing that's very unique about Cardano is, Project Catalyst. It's the treasury system. It allows, the users in Cardano to use their ADA to vote to fund projects that, build for Cardano. And DC Spark is really one of the biggest, in my opinion, proposers or idea proposers. And you guys have had many proposals funded in the past. And right now, Fund 8 is happening. The voting actually starts tomorrow on April 14th. And you guys have a lot of proposals currently in Project Catalyst. Are there 3 proposals that you'd like to cover today, the most important ones, so to speak?
Yeah. So please, everyone, check like hopefully as many proposals as you can. I think we can bring a lot of value to Cardano through the tooling, because, for example, we are pushing all these different projects, but sometimes to build these projects, we need to like recreate tooling. And for example, one of the things that we are like working on, which is like super important, is that there is a tooling called Cardano DB Sync. What this tooling does is that when you have the Cardano chain and you want to create like a service, you want to create like a web app or something, you cannot read information from the Cardano node directly. It's like really tricky. So you want to read the information from a database. So Cardano DB Sync reads the information from the Cardano full node, and it writes it in a PostgreSQL database. Currently, as you know, we have epochs, and this happens every 5 days when you get your rewards from the protocol. And Cardano has grown so much that sometimes Cardano DB it takes a lot of time, because if there's like too many users, they need to update all the different roles of like the accounts with the new rewards. So after an epoch boundary, there's so much computation going on. It takes some time to like update something. So there's like a downtime for dApps, and also or even for like Milkomeda, that it could Milkomeda continue working, but the bridge needs to catch up with Cardano, waiting for Cardano DB to catch up with the state. So we want to eliminate that, and for that we are creating a replacement of Cardano DB that's way faster. Also for wallet, maybe you have experienced that when you're using wallet, sometimes, I just want to see how much ADA I have, and it's taking like 5 or 10 seconds. It's because the wallets use Cardano DB in the back. And also like sometimes like the request for the database is slow, especially because you need to use UTXOs, and that one it takes more computation just to have like an account-based model. So we are creating a replacement using Aura, which is like an open source project, and that's one of our top priorities in terms of Catalyst. So hopefully you can support this, because this will improve not only Flint, not only Milkomeda, but it will the entire ecosystem. And we already have like some experience created like tooling that helps the entire ecosystem, like I mentioned before, when Seba was leading Cardano's serialization library, which is like the library that pretty much everyone uses, including Coinbase. Another one is that this same library that I'm specifying, there is like the Babbage update coming up, and this requires a lot of changes. So the idea is that also we are sending for this library that so many people use, that hopefully through Catalyst we can, you guys can support it, so we can update it for this new hard fork that's coming up. And the last one, also something that I'm super excited about, is that right now when you're moving assets from Cardano to Milkomeda, you stop receiving rewards from the protocol. But wouldn't it be cool that actually maybe you can get sent to a specific protocol before moving to Milkomeda ADA, and you get wrap ADA, and you continue getting rewards, and then this wrap ADA you can move it to Milkomeda to do other stuff, and maybe you can even provide liquidity to a DEX. So you're going to be getting like rewards by providing liquidity, but also you're going to be continue getting the rewards from the Cardano protocol, and it will be like extra yield, extra revenue for you. So I'm super excited for this project, because it will like benefit the entire community. And this is like the delegation for Milkomeda MVP, but we are focusing on a use case for Milkomeda, but it will be open for like other protocols, even the ones launching in Cardano itself, to be able to like provide this. So when you're providing liquidity, you still could be like getting the rewards from the protocol. So this is like a huge one, and hopefully this one passes as well.
Awesome. So the first one was the Aura project, and then
Yes.
What was the title of the second one that would allow the yield?
So this one is called Delegation from Milkomeda MVP.
Okay.
So when you participate in Cardano protocol, usually you're delegating to a stateful operator. So we call it delegation. Maybe we're developers, so sometimes maybe we need to work more in the marketing of the titles. But basically, this specific project that's called Delegation from Milkomeda MVP, which stands for Minimum Viable Product, is still going to be safe. It's just that we don't want to have like too many options. It's going to be doing one thing really well, but one thing only, and that's why it's MVP. And delegation from Milkomeda MVP. But this will be similar for the ones that know about Ethereum or other protocols, Lido, Lido, which allows you to like put your Ether to get rewards for like Ethereum 2.0, and you still like can use that Ether without locking it up to use it in normal Ethereum. So it's like something similar to that concept, inspiration, but applied for Cardano.
That's really cool. Is there a third proposal that you'd like to touch on?
Yeah, so the third one that I mentioned is the Cardano Rust SDK Babbage, which is to upgrade the Cardano serialization library that we have, which everyone is using, including Coinbase, indirectly to what is called Rosetta. So Coinbase created like this tooling that standardized all the different chains called Rosetta, but Rosetta needs to connect to something to be able to create like the transaction. And underneath is using the Cardano serialization library, which now we created a fork because it wasn't at the speed of the maintenance. It wasn't as fast as we wanted. So now we created a new version that's called Cardano multi-platform library, and this is the one that we're going to be like supporting and updating more often because the other one, Emurgo has so many stuff going on, but they were not merging the PRs as fast as we wanted, and so it was like very messy for the developers to be what is like the latest code, and you have like code here in one branch and code in another branch, so it wasn't like simple, and so we want to make life as easier as possible for developers because that's how you get adoption, you get new dApps, because you want developers building stuff rather than to figure out what tool to use, stuff like that. So that's really important for the entire ecosystem because if you have like, I don't know, 100 developers trying to solve the same problem, you're wasting time from 100 developers that could be creating something cool. So everything that's common, it should be like as simple as possible. So developers can actually use their time in something more valuable that's creating dApps for users.
Awesome. And then, I'll actually link all of their proposals in the description down below. And as I mentioned earlier, the voting actually starts tomorrow. I want to say it lasts about 2 weeks, but I'd make sure you verify that. I'll actually put the real text as how long it lasts on screen, the start date to the end date. Make sure you guys check out all those proposals. And if you're interested, go ahead and vote for them. What is Urbit? That's one of the things that you guys mentioned that you're passionate about. What is Urbit?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So as this is Spark, we are really interested in like different technologies, and usually we take like very, very a broad or like a very different technology approaches, and that's also, for example, we got like on Cardano because it was using UTXO model, which is the one that Bitcoin uses, but everyone else using smart contracts, they were using another account-based model, and that's how we were like, oh, let's check out this approach. Seems like very, very interesting. So Urbit is not a blockchain, but it's a decentralized peer-to-peer network. So that provides decentralized identity, a little bit of decentralized storage, among other things. Maybe I can put an example of like evolution of communication and messaging, so it's going to make more sense. So, for example, if you want to talk to someone, there are like multiple chat apps. And for example, someone could say like, oh, let's use WeChat. And someone will be like, what are you talking about, man? Like WeChat is controlled by like this government. They can see your communication. That's like bad idea. Let's use something else. Okay, let's try with WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. It's like, oh, that's much better, but I actually value my privacy a little bit more. Sometimes if I tell you something, I start seeing ads related to the thing that I told you. What's going on with that? I feel like someone is like looking at our conversation to like sort of profit from what I'm interested.
It happened to me yesterday on Discord, actually. My friend and I were talking about flight school, and immediately on my email, oh, advertising for flight school. I'm like, oh, there it is.
What a coincidence. Like, yeah. Wow. So that's what happens. And then you say like, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to move to Signal. Signal, no one is looking for anything. Nothing can happen. They even delete the messages. They're encrypted. That's the best option, right? But then you have the problem that Signal, the servers are centralized. So one day the US government could come and they could like tell them, oh, your servers are shut down. And you're like, you're not going to be able to use Signal because it's not an open network. You cannot like have like a server for Signal. And also for Signal, you need phone numbers. So you still can know that a phone number is texting another phone number. Maybe you don't know what they're texting, but you still like need a phone number that gets registered. And also your ISP can see that you're texting someone else. So that's also another downside, that the identities on Signal are linked to phone numbers, which is not great. And so enter Urbit. So with Urbit, you have decentralized identities, so you can have multiple identities, and also the network there is not like a Facebook or a Signal Foundation that has servers where you connect, but actually it's like a distributed network of servers. So even if one gets shut down, or two or three or 10, there's like many hundred more that are going to be able to like move the messages. So this is like pretty cool because it's like a mesh network. It's like how it should like like maybe a little bit of like internet meant to be. That's like things are decentralized, and if something fails, it goes through some other like route. So I think that this is pretty cool. Orbit is still like pretty early in terms of like it has taken a lot of time to develop this technology because it's like kind of complex.
Yeah.
But right now you can create an identity which looks like a planet. They usually like really like the galaxies, and I wonder if that like sort of like unconsciously also guide us to like work with the Milkomeda concept. But identities in orbit are called planets. So you can easily get a planet almost for free, and then you can install landscape, and you can start like chatting. You can also go to like a sort of a decentralized Discord, which is called groups, and talking to people. So it's pretty cool, and there's like more projects built on this, and only from this year they were able to achieve scalability. So now everything's like working like pretty fast. So I'm like excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, that is really cool, and just seeing anyone build and work on anything that's completely different than what we all have now is really interesting and exciting for me, and I'm definitely going to look more into it after this podcast. So when I was looking through your guys' website, there are three main blockchains that you seem to be interested in, and I'm sure that's going to expand in the future. But currently, it's Cardano, Algorand, and Solana. Really, my question for you is, why those three? What about them really interests you and attracts you to those blockchains?
Yeah, so Cardano, I'm going to skip Cardano because
we already know.
So about Algorand, and I think even Charles has talked about Algorand, that Silvio Micali is behind, and he's like one of the people that have won the Turing. What is it called? It's like the Nobel Prize for like computer science, and he even was behind some of the concepts behind zero knowledge proofs. So he's like a legend in the space. In cryptography, he's like so good. So he also created like a proof of stake consensus protocol, which is like also really, really interesting. So I really believe in Algorand. Personally, I'm excited. I really like what they're doing. Also, I think like the community is like really chill. It reminds me of like the community of Cardano that's like open, approachable, and more like friendly. And so that's why we got interested in Algorand. So we see that it has a lot of like potential growth. And the next one is Solana. So as I was mentioning, there's like different approaches for things, and for some approaches, some things are going to work well. For others, so Cardano tries to be as decentralized as possible, and that's amazing. Never change. But maybe for other approaches, you can be a little bit more centralized, and that's obviously going to impact some things. But also, you can have more transactions. So Solana has so many transactions, but that's the trade-off, decentralization. So that's like another different approach that before, like, it could be interesting. So for example, like video games or things like that, maybe they're going to be making more sense in Solana, but other options that you want to be like censorship resistant, you want to have like other level of like development that's like more like robust, maybe you're going to be using Cardano or Algorand. So that's why we saw in the like Solana as like not a competition to Cardano, but a complement to what Cardano is doing. And there's also one more chain that we're going to be working on, which is Terra. It's really interesting because Terra is behind UST, which is a decentralized stablecoin, which is like really, really interesting. And right now, the biggest decentralized stablecoin that's algorithmic is called DAI. It was in Ethereum, but Terra has UST. I don't know if I already passed DAI or it's going to be about to pass DAI, so I think that's like super interesting. And also through the Anchor protocol, you can get, I think, like around 15% APY when you delegate your USD. So right now, inflation in the US and in multiple countries is like pretty high. In the US, I think it's around 8%, and
We
in
have
South America, in
8.5
countries like
yesterday, is what they said.
yep, it's slightly higher than what they were expecting, and that's what they announce. And usually, like what they announce is lower than reality is. And so maybe I wouldn't be surprised that inflation is actually between 9 to 10. And so if you're not getting a yield on your dollars that's like close to that, you're actually losing purchasing power. So for example, if you go with $100 to a supermarket, the amount of things that you're going to be able to buy next year after inflation with those $100 obviously is going to be less. So how much these $100 need to grow to be able to buy the same amount of things is like this inflation index, which is like around 8.5. I think it's higher, like at least 9.5. But your bank, when you deposit money in your bank in like a saving account, oh yeah, we can give you money, it's pretty good, we're going to give you 2%. And you're like, wait a second, I'm actually losing purchasing power. Maybe the number is going up, but it's not going up as much as inflation. So that's one of the things that I think is like super interesting in DeFi, that is like democratizing access to like good opportunities for like normal people. Because usually like if you have money, you can go to you can set up your family office, or you can access to like some specific hedge funds that all of them are going to give you like higher returns than the inflation. And you're going to be like, oh great, I'm not losing money. But the people that don't make that much money, they don't have access to that. So I think it's super unfair. And this is one of the things that blockchain and decentralized finance like interests me, because there's no like, oh, you have more money, you get access to other better stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, 2% for a savings account, that's pretty high. I usually see like 0.1%, But we really covered all of the questions today. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Is there anything that we didn't mention in this podcast today about DC Spark, Milko Meta, Urbit, anything that you'd like to cover before we head out of here for today?
I think we covered a little bit of everything. Maybe something cool that a lot of people thinking like, oh, Milko Meta is cool. You can do a lot of things with like with Ethereum smart contracts, but can still benefit dApps that are maybe building using Plutus? Can they benefit from Milko Meta, or like completely different? And actually the answer, and it's surprising, that actually dApps that are building 100% in Plutus and in Cardano, they still can benefit from Milko Meta. And you're like, wait a second, how? So Milko Meta also acts as an adapter for what are these things called bridges that allows to move assets from other chains to other chains. So previously Cardano didn't have any bridge, and now in partnership through Nomad, we have a connection with like some of like the biggest chains like Ethereum. So now, for example, Wind Riders, the DEX just launched, and you can find stablecoins in Wind Riders. You can find USDC and USDT, and I think also they're going to have other assets like Drop Bitcoin and Ether, which is like pretty cool. So Cardano is going to be like more self-sufficient, because you're going to be able to like, if you want a stablecoin, you won't have to move to another ecosystem. You're going to be able to trade and maybe just use your favorite Cardano wallet, and you can trade from Cardano to a stablecoin, and then you can go back, and you don't need to go a centralized exchange, and you always have control. So this is something really cool from Milko Meta, because we acted as an adapter for these bridges that could connect EVM-based chains. So now they can connect with Cardano as well. So I'm super excited about that, and hopefully we are going to be helping a lot of dApps that are actually building in Cardano to get exposure to other assets.
I can't really explain how excited I was the first day that, I moved some ADA over to Milko Meta, and I used Milky Swap actually, and I saw USDC on there, and I saw all of these ERC20 based tokens, and, it just feels like I've been waiting such a long time, to actually see the inoperability there. And that's a great way to end the podcast. I'm excited about everything's to come.
Yeah, I think Milky Swap was the first DEX that you saw ADA next to USDC.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a second, that's pretty cool. So probably that was an historic moment.
It was for me, at least, because I've used USDC for years as my stable coin, and just seeing it next to ADA, it's like, ooh, we've made it,
Yeah. It's like really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this podcast today. I really appreciate it. If you did make it to the end, make sure you click the like button, comment Milko Meta down below. to let us know you made it till the end. I appreciate all you guys. If you have any questions, feel free. Make sure you check out the Catalyst proposals down below from DC Spark. Again, voting starts tomorrow. Also, make sure you check out the Rare Bloom. It's an in-person Cardano community event. Would love to see you guys out there, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.